Our show wouldn't exist without you listening. But if you want more information on how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or just to stay in touch, go to flippinthelid.com. We'll see you there. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Flippin' the Lid. You know what we do here by now. We'd love to jump in deep into the stories that have shaped some of the most significant, successful people create an impact in this world. Now, I had the pleasure of having this incredible human beings partner on the show as well as a guest, and the two of them are a dynamic duo, but we're not here to talk about the two of them today. We're here to talk about her. She is a secret weapon at a level that most people don't even see coming around business, sales, marketing. She helps people understand all of the pieces that keep them stuck and helps recognize that though the systems and processes that she's a wizard at building and deploying are essential in business, they're not the thing that keep people stuck. She knows how to actually guide people through. And the only reason she has perspective on this is because she's done the work herself. So shifting from a doctor, chiropractor, now to someone who is an entrepreneur, an absolute TV and video personality, and is around the country and world impacting and changing lives by helping them better understand how to connect, move, and bring money and wealth into their world. She's done the work, and we're going to dig in right now. Lacey, it is so nice to have you here.
Well, I am so excited to be here. And like you said, dig deep, see what we can uncover.
Well, I just said who you were in my words, and that's how I see you. But who are you in your words?
I am a constant evolution of a human, always working, always growing, always testing the boundaries. I feel like if I could identify exactly who I am, then I would be stagnant and that would be no fun. So I'm just like everybody out there that's listening. I'm always trying to better myself and figure out how I can show up as a bigger, better person so that I can serve at a greater level.
So I love that. The constant evolution is absolutely true. I don't believe there's a final destination. No. So bring us into the current moment. If you're a constantly evolving person, who are you right now?
It's so funny because so oftentimes, like when I think about like my journey in life and I think about like who I am and who I want to show up as, for so long, I identified as who I am as a business person, right? I think that for me, from a very, very young age, I started working. I started working when I was 14 years old. And literally to this day, Brian, I've never not had a job. I've never gone a day since I was 14 and not actually done something that produced a dollar or actually qualified as work. And so I think for a very long time, I identified like who is Lacey based on how I was serving in whatever capacity that was in the moment. And now I think I've been doing a lot of work on really figuring out who I am in alignment with who I want to be. And so I think that's the work that I've been doing. So I would say that I'm somebody right now that is trying to show up extremely vulnerable, trying to identify and confront things that for a very long time I like to like sweep under the rug, as many of us do. And because of that, I feel like I've shown up better as a leader for my coaching clients, helping them serve at a higher capacity. I feel like I've shown up better as a wife, as a stepmom, as a dog mom, which my little ham of a dog will be jumping in and out here, I promise. But that's who I am. I feel like that's where I'm at right now in my life. And I'm just consistently and persistently going after the work that's necessary to become a better version of myself.
Yeah, I love it. 14, what was your first job?
My very first job is I worked at a second run movie theater. So that means those are the movie theaters that like the big movies go into the theaters and once like everybody has watched them, talked about them, the critics have gotten a hold of them, then they go into the second run movie theaters. And I'm probably dating myself. We had $2 Tuesdays where you could buy a ticket and get into the movies for $2 and get a large bag of popcorn. So I started working there when I was 14. And by the time I was 15 and a half, before I actually had a driver's license, I was the assistant manager. Wild, should have never happened. The stuff that I did at 15 and a half in a theater like that, not cool. But it taught me a lot, and here I am. So yeah, that was my very first job. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think it really set the foundation of, for me, moving into a place of pure customer service and figuring out how to handle all sorts of issues and sorts of objections at a very young age. So I was blessed to be able to land in that position.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I resonate so much with what you talk about. I started my first ability to earn money around the time I was 12 and going around the neighborhood and offering to pick up people's dog poop. And it was literally the shittiest job I ever had. But it turned into landscaping and other opportunities that led to early management careers just like you. And so, I find those to be extremely foundational, and a lot of people who've learned to really perform in life have started to do that very early. Yeah. Those who get the entrepreneurial bug and want to build something, have some risk tolerance, like they always find ways to lean into that. And so,
you know what? I got to say something because you just like spurred a memory for me that I haven't thought about in a really long time.
Let's go.
My cousin and I, when we were 12 years old, we would go into our homes and go into the pantries and gather all this food like beef jerky and bananas and all sorts of stuff, put it in a basket, and we would go door to door in our neighborhoods and sell it to people and say that we were collecting for charity. Totally not cool, not kosher. I would never recommend anybody does that. But that was actually my first, I think, entrepreneurial bug, was selling stuff from my pantries at a higher cost.
Yeah, I mean, but like that's like, honestly, but that's a pattern of what I've seen with so many people who especially identify as entrepreneurs, those who build something or actually go out and find a way to provide for themselves, right? It's a different breed. It's a different mentality in so many cases. If that was your first experience at 12, right? And you didn't quite realize it even a second ago until you were like, no, I actually was earning money before I was 14 because I was doing this.
Yeah.
When did you start to become aware of like this draw and desire to be able to perform or outperform, especially at a young age?
Oh, gosh. You know what? I think that was always innately inside of me. I mean, my mom said even at a very, very young age that I always had this different kind of spirit, she said, than any other kid that she ever saw. I always knew what I wanted, and I was relentless in being able to get that. Relentless. She said, I never met a child that would go in the grocery store and know what they wanted to eat and would not stop asking for it until they got it. And she said, I did that since I was a kid. And I've always been that way. I've always kind of been able to be very decisive, understand what I'm going after, and just go after it until I actually am able to achieve that. So long before I had my first job, I feel that was something that I did. And then pretty much ever since then, everything that I've worked in, I've always strived to figure out how to accelerate as quickly as possible in the current position or job that I was in, whatever that looked like in that moment, whether it was something that I felt like I was going to be in forever or not. And so I feel like that was probably part of me from when I was very, very young.
Yeah, I have no doubt that you've always had that motor in you. I think that that's obviously very significant. And you go after and you chase what's possible. What was the first experience of you not getting what you wanted?
Oh, the first thing that comes to mind, I remember so as soon as I turned 18, I ended up moving. I grew up in Silicon Valley in California, which was a completely different world. I mean, if you haven't lived there and you ever went there, I mean, it's unreal, the palpability of ideas flying around the atmosphere around you. The energy is just totally different. I mean, Silicon Valley is where everything is birthed, right? eBay and Google and Yahoo. I literally could walk around the corner from my home and walk to Netflix when it was one little red office door, right? And so I always feel like I was surrounded by the energy of idea creation. And so when I turned 18, I moved from Silicon Valley and I moved into the Sierra Mountains. I just needed a change of pace. And I was young, living on my own, and I met somebody out there and I tried to start a t-shirt business. That was my first probably like real, like, I'm going to go after something completely outside of the box, not mainstream, not like earning a dollar for my hour, not this time money exchange. Tried to start a t-shirt business and it just totally flopped. I mean, it went south very quickly. I'd put a little bit of money in it and just couldn't get it off the ground. And I feel like that was my first real true experience of disappointment relative to something that I felt like I created from me.
Yeah.
And that would be probably, if you say like the first time I didn't get something I wanted, because that was a different kind of want, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want for like a thing, or I didn't want to win something. I wanted to create something, and I wasn't able to do it. So that for me was probably one of the most significant memories of not getting what I truly wanted.
Yeah. What's really fascinating though about that is if I'm following the timeline, you were in your early 20s when that happened?
I think I was 19 by that time.
No, yeah, like late teens, early 20s. So for you to have not experienced not getting what you want until almost 20 years old, I would tell you that's not a normal path. And so if you, and by the way, I don't say that as a good or a bad thing. I find that really interesting that you identify with the first moment of disappointment around not getting what you wanted happened at 19 or 20. And so help me understand, what did the first 20 years of your life look like? Like, what were your belief systems? What were your foundational existence through your family? And you're around this innovative world. Like, how did the creativity get channeled for you early?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess I've never looked at it through that lens of, man, that first feeling of true disappointment didn't happen until I was, 19. But there's probably a lot of things that I was disappointed in, growing up in my first 19, 20 years. There was a lot of things that I didn't get my way, or I didn't get what I want, but nothing that was so momentous in my life that I recognized it as a moment of opportunity or
that it paused you in the moment, right? Like everything else is like, oh yeah, okay, well I didn't get extra dessert for dinner or whatever.
Yeah, like that's
so that's what I mean. Like, to be 20 and have it like be the first time that, like, at a cellular level, you're like, wait a minute, kind of rattles your sense of self for a second, right?
Yeah. You know what? It's really interesting. And I think I might have shared this with you. I can't remember, but my parents actually were 30 years apart. And so there was a massive age difference between them. My dad was born in 1927, grew up in the Great Depression. He was just a different breed. I mean, if you think about people that for most of you listening out there, that's your grandparents, your great grandparents, that generation. The reality of it is they grew up differently. There was a different type of, I don't even know, like toughness and tenacity.
It's the truth. It's the truth.
It is. It's just, and I growing up with him as a father, I feel like I inherently took that on and absorbed what that was. And so I feel like growing up, I learned how to be very strong, had a lot of self-control. And for me, like, my father taught me a lot of morals and belief systems that are deeply ingrained in who I am today, that I feel like a lot of people in my generation didn't get the experience of. And there's a lot of work ethic around that. Yeah. So even though we grew up and we didn't have a lot of money, we were pretty poor. That's why I started working when I was 14, that I didn't have an attachment to things. I've never really been attached to stuff or things. So therefore, when you don't have attachment to things, you don't experience disappointment on those levels. Yeah. But I do have attachment to the things that I want to create, to the things that I truly believe in, to the paradigms that I hold on to. And so for me, when I was 19, that was the first time that had been challenged that I truly remember. I think that's what that was. But again, there was so much, disappointment on little things, but nothing significant enough that it paused me. Yeah.
No, and again, I don't say that as good or bad. I just I don't find that often that the first moment of like cellular rattle for someone is at age 20, right? I mean, even in really insulated situations. And so it's cool, but even the way that you just talked about that, right? What I also extracted and heard you say is like, you also learned how to calibrate yourself in some ways. And you also use the word control, right? Which is to not be overly reactionary or too heightened or right. And you also said earlier on that there's things that you're still learning to not brush under the rug. And often control is associated with also armor that's avoidance in other areas. And so though these were all gifts and treasures that you extracted through this period, they also clearly created beliefs intellectually and emotionally that you're now unwinding in different ways. And so if that, go ahead. It sounds like you want to say something there.
No, absolutely. And like what you're talking about is exactly what I'm working on now as a person, because, for me, you're right. That's a generational armor that was passed down to me.
Yes.
That for the majority of my life, I have worn with a lot of honor and pride.
Yeah.
But I do realize now that I'm 41, like it doesn't always serve me at the highest level for my good. I used to say all the time, I'm that person that everybody would come to, all of my friends, people that I know, people that I don't know, to just unload all of their, can I say shit?
Oh, you can say whatever the fuck you want.
Okay, cool. Okay. I just said it. But they would just unload all of their shit.
That did remind me though, we need to make an earmark to make sure that our team updates this on all the platforms to be explicit, not clean. Because I think our show is still listed as clean and we have so many episodes that are not. So keep going.
Yeah, cool. You just dropped a bigger bomb than me. But so like people have always unloaded their shit on me. Because of the armor that I carried, I've never, ever come back with judgment. I could take on a load of other people's issues and junk and hear them out and listen and bounce ideas off them and not absorb it into self, right? Because of that armor. And so for a very long time, it served me in helping others. But what the work I'm doing now, Brian, is I realized that it actually didn't serve me as a person, because that armor made sure that I did sweep things under the rug, that I didn't identify or confront my own shit, right?
Yeah.
And so I have a realization now that, man, for so long I've been so cold in some ways, in order to be able to be that person for others, that in some ways that it requires you to neglect yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I identify so deeply with so much of that. And this is literally what we teach in our world is the concept of armor and where you're protecting yourself, you're disconnecting yourself, and all of the ripple effects of what that can mean for people.
Sure.
And so clearly it comes from a place of protection, largely that's unconscious for most of us because it's so deeply conditioned into us, right? So you're having this moment of realization and understanding. As you raise your level of awareness and start to move through this, what were the greatest areas that you discovered you were protecting yourself?
Probably for me, I think like I am an emotional being, of course, but I don't express a lot of emotion, right? My spectrum of expression, because of that control, it's here. It's very difficult to get me extremely angry. I could probably count on both hands how many times I've cried, and the majority of those times were when my father passed away. But that's just who I've always been. And so instead of like expressing full out on either end, I've always just been really steady, really, really even, really strong and secure. But I also understand now that what got me here won't get me there, right? And so that I need to do the work to be able to step into that sometimes, be a little bit more, not be more emotional, but be able to express more emotionally, right? And so that's the journey that I'm on right now. So that's always what I did. I would say that my armor didn't exist here to here. It doesn't exist here. It's always been here, right? In my heart. And so that has, I think, inhibited me from having super extremely deep personal relationships. There was a long time where I just didn't, I could easily, and I hate to say this because it sounds so icky, but it's just part of learning, right? I could easily walk away from anyone and maintain a friendship, even in my personal relationships, because I just never allowed for that attachment on a deep level to occur, right?
Yeah. I mean, when you're protecting yourself at that level, that's literally what you're doing, is preventing that deep level of connection. It's just, it's a fact. And so many people don't see it that way, but it's real. One of the things I find really interesting, because they often don't go together either, is that typically people who are armored, who are controlled and have those layers of protection, and I'm not going to say typically, that it could be an overstatement, but often I find that what that does is create a structured set of beliefs that then life only further validates those beliefs. They get formed then behind the armor of whatever we're protecting, right? And so if we look at it through that lens, oftentimes people are not able to remain objective and non-judgmental because they can become very subjective and judgmental based on where their armor and protection lies. You know, you even said earlier, like your superpower is to not be judgmental, right? And yet at the same time, you can fully admit that it was because you protected from taking on the emotional energy, but you could still process the information. Really cool detachment in that case, but it's also led to more surface level connections than you desire. What I am interested in, though, is what topic pushes you to the brink of that superpower of not being judgmental?
Well, what do you mean by that? Give me a little more expansion.
Like, is there a topic that you cannot remain objective and non-judgmental on?
Ooh. That's a good question.
What pushes you to the brink of that superpower? Because again, if your superpower is not being judgmental, what's your kryptonite?
Yeah. What's my kryptonite? What do I get like super passionate about? Probably, and I would never ever talk about it without people that I feel super safe around, but like I have like a lot of thoughts and ideas around what's happening in the world, probably what would be thought processes, conspiracies, those types of things. Because I am also a very logical being, and I do like being objective. That means that I like a lot of research. I read, I dive into things, but I'm also very aware that I can get heated about politics, conspiracies, those types of stuff. So I read from both viewpoints. I'm the kind of person that would watch Fox and CNN, right? But it doesn't mean that that's not something that I can often release judgment about. And I will tell you why. It's because of some of my own life experiences that I had, that I feel like were very personal at a very young age, that led me to have beliefs and paradigms around how things should work. And because they were so deeply ingrained in me and affected me profoundly, I think that that's why I have a hard time releasing judgment. I'm not judgmental of other beings, and I believe every person has a right to their own journey. And I believe that everybody makes decisions based off of the understanding, life experience, and knowledge that they have in that moment. That's why I don't have to judge what somebody believes, sees, experiences, or says. But for me, when it comes to my own self, sometimes I have difficulty of shifting that lens, right? Changing that perspective.
I actually really appreciate the way that you talked about that. Because I was going to ask you point blank, when you were being so clear on that it's a topic that you can't not be judgmental on, how does that translate to your viewpoint of people? And you answered that because it's already something that you're aware of and intentional through. And so the way that you're able to even talk about how you do have very specific viewpoints in categories that can be polarizing, particularly in our society, right? And that you choose to deploy that obviously in safe environments makes complete sense.
Right.
I also do appreciate, though, that though you have a belief system that you believe is validated, trusted, and looks and shapes and forms your perspective, that you also are very open to the fact that other perspectives exist, and those are within the right of other people. And so truly, I'm just reinforcing and repackaging what you said in a different way, because I wanted to make sure that you heard and everyone heard that is truly objectivity and non-judgment, is that we can all exist with even varying extremes of beliefs, but the gift is often in the gray area. And it's a matter of figuring out where and how we meet people where they are. Not that we have to agree with everybody, not that we have to be in everybody's camp. And oh, by the way, and not that we have to argue, but that we can seek perspective and allow ourselves to recognize that if we get triggered, it's typically from the things that are our experiences that have shaped our beliefs.
And it always is. I understand too that all of my triggers, the reason that they are my triggers is because they are something within me that sets me off, right? And the idea is that I need to understand, where does that actually come from? Like you say, like where is that deep root? Where did that begin? And if I can understand that, then I can also understand that you have that too.
Yeah.
And so I can't pass judgment on your deep rooted reasonings if I don't want you to pass judgment on mine. Right. And so that's something that I've had to learn. And that, I would say that I was probably blessed enough to learn that lesson pretty early. Again, growing up with a father that was from such an older generation, from a very young age, I had to learn how to deal with judgment from others on what that looked like, what they thought my experience was, and learn why I didn't want that in my own life and didn't want to be that person. And so I feel like I was able to learn that lesson pretty early on.
Yeah, that's awesome. You identify as a former adrenaline junkie. I'm curious.
I wouldn't say former.
Oh, well, then I'm reading it wrong. I had just said I used to be an adrenaline junkie, so I put former in there, but you're an active adrenaline junkie.
I would say I still seek out things that get me high. Like not like that, but like on adrenaline.
And by the way, even if you were high on other things, there'd be no judgment here. I don't, again, to each their own. Right,
we're in a no judgment zone.
We're in a no judgment zone. That's literally how we exist. This is like objective and non-judgmental.
Perfect.
I'm curious though, like if you're by the way, I'm also an adrenaline junkie, and I feel like so often in my life, I've had to be almost on the brink of death to feel alive, right? Now, There's varying reasons why mine is to that degree of description, but what activities have pushed you to your limits, and where do you typically get your adrenaline high, as you call it?
So when I was younger, it was anything that was like just fast paced, right? I mean, when I at a very young age, I learned how to shoot guns. I would jump out of planes. I've gone skydiving a lot of times, broke my tailbone skydiving, and decided even after I broke my tailbone, I want to do this again. I'm that kind of person. One of my favorite things though to do is just driving. And so one of the things that I learned from somebody that I was dating a long time ago, a sheriff, he used to teach cops how to navigate in criminal chases and drive on the track in their vehicles. And so I learned at a very young age how to apex, how to drive my car without the clutch, like how to do all sorts of things. So still to this day, if I can get in my car with nobody else in it, I'll go out on the highway and take my car to the limits. And so that's kind of where I get my adrenaline high. I still love to do that. I'm a little bit more tame now. I used to snowboard all the time. Anything like that, you name it, I would do it. But I'm more tame now because, I'm 41. My body doesn't necessarily recover in the way that it used to.
Yeah,
I would love to believe that it did. I work out, those kinds of things now. But yeah, if I could get and jump out of a plane again, if somebody was like, let's go skydiving, I would do it today. I would do my 40 some odd jumps so that I could jump myself and then, get my permit to do so. I want to learn how to fly a plane. Like I have all those things on my bucket list. So
yeah. All right. So favorite stretch of road to drive, favorite car, favorite person to be in the passenger seat while you're driving.
Oh, okay. So favorite stretch of road. This is in California and it's going from Silicon Valley to Santa Cruz, the beach, Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. A lot of people have heard it. And there's a highway called 17. And it goes through the mountains. And they used to call it the Red Highway because there's so many accidents and it's like so unfortunate. But it's a great stretch of highway because people would get sloppy out there. But it literally would just wind with these sharp turns through the mountains. You go on that stretch of highway and you drive that at full speed as fast as you can go. It is in the middle of the night when there's not a lot of people on it, unreal. I probably used to do that 2 to 3 times a week. When I had my car at that time, it was an Acura Integra. So much fun.
What year?
Oh God. I don't even remember. Maybe that's a good question. I don't know, like early 2000s. It was like that green, I don't even know, like mint green color. It was 2-door. It was awesome.
It was the early 2000s. Okay. I had a 92 Acura Integra. That was like the car I used to drive, and I souped that thing up and had so much fun in that thing.
Oh man, you can fly around corners. You can hug corners tight with that car.
They're like little go-karts, man. Those things
was a lot of fun. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. But I would say right now, I have a Porsche Boxster, and because it's a mid-engine, The engine sits in the
I
middle.
love mid-engine. It is so amazing.
The way that it spins.
There's no oversteer. It just pushes you through the turns. It's unbelievable.
It does.
It's a completely different experience.
And nobody in the passenger seat. I don't want to be responsible for somebody else in there.
All right. I respect all of those answers. All right. So I want you to take us to a dark night on that road. You're behind the wheel, and let's just assume you have your Boxster today, right? You are driving. You are in a place of just serenity behind that wheel. What are you experiencing in your body, and what's your existence when you're in that moment?
You know, I'd always put certain songs on full blast, sing at the top of my lungs. And it's just, you ever in a moment in your life where everything becomes effortless, right? Like we were talking about that earlier before we came on. When you're in true alignment with who you are at your highest level, what you truly desire, and what lights you up, like when you're in that like pure zone of like genius that you love. And one of those things is driving for me. Like everything just becomes effortless, and you're in the state of ease, and it's almost like time stands still, right? That's what those moments are like for me. It's like there's nothing else around but me in that moment. It's like absolute, it's the absolute pinnacle of being present, right? That's what that is.
So where and how do you transfer that knowledge and ability to be present in that experience to other areas in your life?
I think that's a work in progress. I think in today's world, being like purely present, if that's the word I'd like to put in front of it, purely present, it's a practice.
It is.
I'm the first to admit it's not easy. Like even in this moment, you know, like you and I are connecting, we're conversing, we're talking about these amazing concepts and deep things, but there's still 80 million other things going on. I've got my team here, I've got my dog on my lap. And so for me, it's a constant practice of being present. But I try to do that in all the moments that I am connecting with others. And I really actively try to, I always talk about the movie Clear the Mechanism.
Yeah.
Got James here. What is that movie? It's like 10 Cup or something like that. Again, dating myself. It's a golf movie. And every time he hits the shot, he says, clear the mechanism. And like everything goes dark except
Wasn't that a Kevin Costner?
It was Kevin Costner.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Kevin Costner.
See, okay. You got me. I know.
I got you.
But that's...
I think Kevin Costner, and I go to Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, like the original one way back in the day. Right?
I
like,
love it.
I don't know. Yeah,
but that's
good.
It. It's how can you wake up every day, and in the moments that truly you desire to get meaning out of, how can you like clear the mechanism? So that's what I try to do. And again, not always perfect at it, not always the best at it. And it will forever be a practice because that's how life is. But yeah, that's how I try to translate that.
How do you catch yourself in the moments that you're not being present when the mechanism is not clear?
Oh, gosh. I mean, it happens a lot throughout the day. And I think it's slipping and checking, right? And it's just recognizing that it's that feel. It's almost like a feeling of resistance throughout the day, you know, where you're like, you can wake up in the morning and when you are like present, things just start moving, they start flowing. We talk about being in that state of ease. And then when you allow distractions to disrupt that flow, it takes away your ability to be present, right? And that's the moment. Like, and so for me, it's more of a feeling. It's like a gut check, like, stuff is not going, shit is not going right now how I thought it would. Why? Where do I need to shift my energy? Where do I need to shift my focus? Where do I need to show up more present in this moment to get this back on track? I think that's what it feels like.
Yeah, beautiful. What does Sean mean to you?
Sean is a like complement to all that I am. I would say that he is an amplifier of who I am, which for me, a lot of growing up, I felt like a lot of people tried to put me in a box or cage me a little bit because they didn't understand me or what I was trying to do. Even my parents, growing up in a 9-to-5 mentality, don't understand entrepreneurship or these desires. And people try to put you in a box and put you in a cage. Sean never tried to do that to me. And I think that he would look at the things that I had inside of me and he would say, how do we amplify this? How do we make this better? Instead of trying to shift it. And so he's an amplifier of who I am. And I hope that I'm the same to him. That's
beautiful. You guys have done a lot in life together and you've found ways to integrate and grow so many beautiful things together. And you came into his world and became a second mom in cases to his daughters and were taking over raising and also then figuring out life and integrations on the tail end of, by the way, the disaster that happened down south for him in his prior life, right?
Right.
What did the process of connection and building look like for you in your experience in your first few years together?
I mean, I think anybody that goes through things like that, there was moments of pure bliss and moments of turbulence, right? As anything difficult would present itself. I mean, that was just the reality of it. We knew immediately when we realized that we had fallen in love, we knew immediately that we were on the same mission. And I think that was such a blessing for us because so many people go through life and they have these individual missions, these individual visions, these things that they're going after. For Sean and I to be able to come to a commonality of what we truly wanted to do and the level at which we wanted to serve and how we wanted to shift and change the world, to be able to connect on that, ensured that no matter what came our way, even in those early times, that we could get through it, right? And there was so much, there was a lot of difficulty in there. And there was moments where we had no money and we didn't know how we would make it till the next month. And we didn't see eye to eye on our thought processes and our belief systems. But what we always knew is that it's rare in life to find somebody that can connect with you on that deep of a level. And that's what perpetuates you forward.
It's unbelievable. How would you describe your collective mission?
For us, I think at the core of it, I mean, we're both chiropractors by profession, and we have such a profound, deep reverence for chiropractic and love for chiropractic and an understanding of how it can shift the planet. I think for us, everything that we do is to elevate chiropractic in the world. But we do that by serving others on a level where it allows them to, like you said, ripple out and serve at a greater capacity. Because chiropractic's not about pain or discomfort or helping people get rid of their symptoms. What it's truly about at its core is uncovering who that person really is as their best self and showing them at a deeper level how they can show up for themselves and the individuals in their lives in a more profound way. And so that's what we believe chiropractic can do. And we believe that other people can do that in other ways. And so for us, it's about helping others help others to be able to shift the planet.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. I mean, it's deeply about alignment. You know, I think that the narrative of what you just gave to how you two define chiro is not necessarily how most of the masses associate with the industry or chiropractors in general. And so, and I've seen one for years. I'm a big believer in multiple different modalities of healing, as you know. So I want to be really clear when I say this. I'm pro chiro, and for all the reasons that you articulated. But can you give a little bit of depth to those who are like, well, wait a minute, I thought a chiro just adjusted your back and your neck and they keep you kind of moving and getting into alignment. How are they going to get to the core of my essence and my being to help me become that person? Right? Like, give a little bit of framing into the holistic nature of the work that you guys do, build and teach and train so that it can be deployed at larger levels through other practices that aren't even yours necessarily.
Oh, I love this question, and I'm going to do it less technical than we typical answer that usually will come out of my mouth or Sean's. I'm gonna talk about something I read. So the creator of chiropractic, he wrote a bunch of books about the philosophy of chiropractic, and one of my favorite things that he says in those books is he talks about brain congestion, body starvation.
Yeah.
And I think that this can be applied and taken into, I know you hear that and you're like, man,
Well, it just resonates so deep with the way we view through the world. So like those words are hard, man.
I know. And I remember the first time I read that and I was like, that is what it's all about. Chiropractic essentially in its essence is releasing the brain congestion to feed the body and reconnect those two things together. Because when there's a disconnection and you have that congestion in your brain, whether that is from a true physiological stance or we're talking about a mental mindset, emotional stance, or however you want to view it, energy, right? It could be an energetic like congestion. It could be a physical congestion. It could be a mental congestion. It could be an emotional congestion. It still starves the body and the body suffers, right? Those things need to be resolved. Chiropractic helps bring resolution to that. It feeds the body and it releases the congestion in the brain on all those different pillars and facets. And that allows somebody, when that change and shift happens, it allows them to show up as who they truly are. That's how that translates. That's what chiropractic is all about. And there's a lot of different mechanisms in chiropractic that can achieve that goal. That's why people get confused, because there's many ways that can happen. It could be through the adjustment. It could be through a tool that somebody uses. But the reality of it is that's what we're doing. We're releasing that congestion for somebody to live fully out and live optimally.
Yeah, well, that's what we believe in, is identifying and removing the trash from people's past that continues to show up, and right, they're the biggest problems in life, business, relationships, and health. And, I love that brain congestion concept, because it even further enforces that when we do create the armor and we shift to a place of just mental toughness alone, right, all it does is create narratives and beliefs that create noise, resistance, interference, and congestion that needs to be diffused, eliminated, or removed so that you can start to get back in your body and being connected with yourself. It's full circle to so much of what we've talked about. So thank you for expanding it on that description, because I think that's a really beautiful way for people to be able to access the concept of chiro. And it's such an important healing mechanism, and it's a great way to understand your body, align with your body, and where and how your energy gets blocked or moves if you can get yourself in your body.
Absolutely.
I am really curious. You guys have this shared mission, this shared belief. What's the most difficult challenge working with your spouse and being partners in everything in life?
Because we are different people. I mean, the reality of it is, even if you have a shared mission and a shared belief and you align on a lot of paradigms and ideas and concepts, it doesn't always mean that you agree on how things should go, right? And I think that's probably the hardest part, is just pure leadership, right? Yeah. How are we going to handle this situation? Who's going to handle it? Who are we going to hire next? Because obviously we have different areas of expertise. We have different strengths. We have different things that we utilize in our business that complement each other very well in order for us to grow what we have grown. But it doesn't mean that we always agree on what the next logical step is. So I think for us, it's always that, like really figuring out how can we hash through what makes sense next, and do it in a way that doesn't compromise us as individuals and our relationship, and make sure that we're maintaining that component of it just to the business. I think also Sean and both have difficulty shutting off.
No.
I would think that maybe, it's nice, like in a relationship, there's oftentimes a balance. Somebody is like, hey, we should shut off a little bit more, or we should slow down a little bit, or we should take a vacation. Usually there's one person that's a little bit more of a driver. Two drivers sometimes get the car spinning in circles. You know what I mean? So that's where we're at.
I mean, that is absolutely the truth. It is interesting though, because I feel like, though I haven't known you that long, right? We've known each other now for a couple of years, and
Yep.
and in that time, both you and I have both evolved, changed, and grown
So
in our own
much.
unique ways in our business, and so many cool things. As I've watched you and you talk about your current state, right? You are absolutely raising your level of awareness and moving into these places of healing and understanding in yourself that didn't exist before, right?
Mhm.
And what's been really cool, and I didn't know you before, so I'd like you to expand on this, but I didn't used to believe I was creative.
Mm.
I was like so conditioned behind my armor on like, I need to show up this way and do these things and do this. And like, there was always a way to do things. And though I broke the mold when it came to growing things, I just believed I wasn't creative. You're getting deep into creativity in ways that may or may not have existed in your life before, but I'd love to understand, where has the role of creativity played in your life? And has there been a change since you've been opening yourself? And specifically as it relates to creativity, where's your greatest place to express it right now?
So that's really interesting. I think that I have had a little bit of creative juice my whole life, but it took effort to tap into it,
Really?
right? Like pure conscious effort, like, oh, I need to get myself in a different environment in order to get into a creative space, or I need to, quiet everything around me in order to tap into my creative mind. Like, you know what I mean? Like it required a lot more effort. And now that I've been doing a lot of this work and kind of uncovering who I am and working with my life coach a lot more, I feel like I can step into that place with a lot more ease. And oftentimes the creativity comes in moments where I never experienced it before and moments that I don't expect it, right? And so for me, actually, I would say that the creativity comes more in my my expression of content. And so a lot of times when I'm creating content, not like social media content, but like for our workshops and working with my clients one-on-one, I feel like there I've actually been more creative in the solutions that I can offer, in my perspective and ability to see, versus like creative, like like brand new ideas and things that I want. It's more creativity through my ability to help.
Yeah. I would argue that all of your cooking is pretty damn creative as well. And I know that for me, that it is a creative expression to be in the kitchen and to be able to layer flavors and food and create experiences that people can connect with and have communion through. I know that you've been exploring a lot with food, and I mean, geez, like you're going to go to culinary school soon, aren't you?
Yes, I applied. I got accepted. I just have
Congrats.
to find the right time to start. Thank you.
Yeah, because you've got all this available time in your life right now, right?
Right. I know. So.
Yeah, you just twirl your thumbs and question, what are you going to do next with your life? So that's amazing. So talk to me about cooking, and has that always been a part of your life? And what do you experience when you're in the kitchen?
Yeah, so really interesting. Growing up in the family that I did, my mom did not ever cook. I mean, I think we ate microwave TV dinners pretty much as long as I can remember. Frozen pizzas, stovetop stuffing, top ramen. Like that's what my diet consists of when I was a kid, right? My father, interestingly enough, he was in World War II and he was a cook in World War II. But in World War II, you have to cook everything until it's like freaking beef jerky so that nobody gets sick, right? So food was not like this integral part to our family or part of our connection. And somewhere inside of me, I always wanted that. So I started watching Food Network, Bobby Flay. I will meet him one day.
Yes, I love Bobby Flay. Yes.
So everybody
By the way,
knows.
When you meet him, I want to be there with you, Lacey. Let's just coordinate because he's on my list.
Knows Bobby is on my list, so I'm going to meet him soon. But I always say, like, I literally feel like he's the one that taught me to cook. I've watched him, I think, for 18 years now, like so long. And so I taught myself to cook through watching Food Network. That and Murder, She Wrote. That is so weird, but that's all I used to watch. Like, it's so strange. But I watched cooking show. Yeah, after cooking show. And so I've always loved being creative in the kitchen, but not because it was an outlet for creativity, because it connected me on a deeper level with people than I gave myself credit for because I had that armor. So I think that that's why it was so profound for me. And now I thrive in it. And I think for so long, there's a difference between your zone of excellence, which you are amazing at. I'm a great coach. I feel like I get great results for my clients. I can teach really well. That is my zone of excellence. But my zone of genius, the thing that lights me up, that fuels me, that excites me, that I could do all day, every day, is being in the kitchen. And I denied it for a very long time. And I truly, truly find happiness in it now and recognize it. And so I've been working really hard on allowing that piece of me, to that desire to show up. And that's why I'm going to go to culinary school.
I love that you're embracing that and leaning into that. And that's such a powerful statement for you to commit to that feeling in the kitchen. That's unbelievable. What does that look like for you? What's the end goal with culinary school and your expression and desire to spend more time in the kitchen?
You know, it's really funny. I mean, my team always jokes like I should have a restaurant. My favorite thing to cook is soups from scratch. So one of my employees that works for me, Pat, he calls it the soup kitchen. So every time they're here, they pick soups that they want, and then I'll make soups all
No
week.
soup for you.
No soup for you. I love it. You got to work for soup. We'll work for soup. But maybe someday I'll have a restaurant. I mean, I've been in the restaurant industry for a long time. I was a server for a long time. I was a trainer, did catering gigs. Like, I've done it all. So maybe someday I'll open a restaurant. But honestly, the reason I want to go to culinary school is just to be able to take my passion and skill to another level, and understand it in a more deeper way than I do now, to be able to create things that I just don't even know are possible yet. You know?
By the way, I've said to my wife multiple times that at some point I'd like to go to culinary school for fun, because it's an area that I also enjoy. I denied that, though, for about the last 4 years. I just got back in the kitchen in about the last year. I used to cook all the time at our old house, and then life happened and kids happened, and we got into this rhythm where we were just going through different processes. And now I probably, when I'm in town, I probably cook 2 out of 3 nights that I'm in town if we're not eating out. And that's, for me, an expression and ability for me to connect with my family and kids. I love that you brought up Bobby Flay, because my favorite cast iron my favorite cast iron skillet is a Bobby Flay cast iron skillet. And I bought it at the time because I didn't know about Lodge. And I was like, Bobby Flay, I love him. And I saw his stuff and I bought it. And it's legitimately my favorite cast iron because it's like the best. What dish would you prepare that you think is reflective of your personality?
Oh, of my personality. You know what's really interesting? My favorite thing to cook is prime rib.
Yeah.
I love creating the perfect crust with the perfect inside of a prime rib. And you know why I think this is reflective of my personality? Because I've been a vegetarian since 5th grade. I've never even had a bite of any prime rib that I've ever cooked. But it's a challenge for me to be able to create something that I don't even know the reality of what it tastes like, and know that it can excite people and make them happy and make their taste buds go wild. Yeah. That, for me, that is fulfilling. And so maybe that's why I love it so much. Yeah.
That is like super cool. I totally identify and agree with that, but that's just fun to hear you even talk about that. So I'm really curious, as you have looked at your life, you mentioned earlier that there were moments when things were not always easy. Things were tough. You guys were tight on money, right? You guys teach wealth creation and the ability to amplify yourself in the world. You teach people how to leverage and scale their lives through systems. So I'd like 2 things in this. One, can you take us to one of the moments when maybe a creditor was calling, or the cash flow wasn't where you wanted it to be, or you were experiencing something that is now not your reality, but you help people move through, and the lessons that you extracted through it?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing always, and Sean and I talk about this in our story a lot, is it wasn't even about a creditor. It wasn't about like a bill not being paid. When we first got together and we didn't have a lot of money, we lived in this like little teeny tiny 625 square foot apartment. A while ago, I found the diagram for it. And 2 kids, and could not literally afford any furniture. So we didn't have a bed or a mattress for them to sleep on. So we ended up getting a hand-me-down piece of a couch from a student that was moving across the country. And that's what they slept on. And for me, that was I didn't know how to handle that moment, right? Because you feel so defeated that's where you had to go.
Okay.
And so a lot of people may experience that defeat when creditors are calling, or their debt is too high, or they can't pay the bills. That was the moment of defeat for me. And I think that going through that and learning how to not marinate on that and obsess over it, that moment, and move forward from it is really what we teach people and what I teach people. It's moving from a state of constantly being in this lack and scarcity mindset into believing that there's more, and that it's yours, and that it already is yours, and that you have the ability to go after it. And so for me, I think that was the biggest thing. Again, it's just helping people identify the root cause of their mindset around money, and how we can begin to shift that so you don't have to live in that moment forever. So that green couch moment only has to exist in my past and doesn't have to exist in my now.
Yeah. What would you say is your biggest problem, biggest interference, biggest area of resistance currently in your life or business?
It still is worry. As much as I am objective and non-emotional, because I have a tendency to read too much or research too much or look at too many things, I can get into a rabbit hole about stuff. And then I can begin to focus on things that I don't necessarily in that moment have control over. And I think for a lot of people, they can resonate with that is allowing the things that you don't have control over to dictate and take over the things that you do, right? And so I have to gut check myself often. That's my area of interference. And whether that's my mindset around money and abundance and overflow, or that's my mindset about what's happening in the world, or would or could happen in the world, or all the underlying conversations and current and the politics, sometimes I allow that to seep in to my mind more than it should.
Yeah. What's the Lacey legacy going to be?
I think it's just I want people to say that when I'm gone, that she impacted me in ways that she never knew, and I never got to tell her. I think if I could die and know that there's people out there that never got to tell me a way that I may have shifted them, or something that I said that helped them get through. The legacy I would love to be unknown impact that I had.
Unknown impact. That's pretty significant. You guys do a lot to help teach, empower, elevate lots of businesses in your world. You are creating pathways around marketing and sales and building businesses. And you don't just support service providers, but there are many service providers that you support, and you coach and you speak, and you are out there looking for every possible way to create impact. As you look at all of the ways that you engage in the world today, what would you say is the most accessible for the audience to be able to access, to learn more about who you are and how you guys are supporting folks?
Yeah, I mean, any of our social media channels, we put out so much content and little snippets and little gold bars for people. I think it's a great way for them to say, I resonate with that message and the way that they deliver content, or I don't, right? And so we have our YouTube channel has tons of content on it. I think it's just Sean and Lacey on YouTube. Going there, I mean, we do so many things. We've got little snippets. We've got snippets of our workshops, how we teach That would be a great place to start. And then checking out blackdiamondclub.com. That's our membership group. If you like the message that you're hearing, diving into our community and our network of other people that also resonate with that message will just help elevate you if that's where you're trying to go.
Lacey, I am really grateful for the way that you guys show up in the world. I am curious if you've got a closing thought you'd like to leave anybody with, a message that you want people to hear beyond just how to access you.
One of the things that got me through my early stages of self-development and working on mindset and working through things was the line, done is better than perfect. I haven't talked about that in a really long time because I have worked really hard to evolve off of that. But right now, with everything that's going on in the world and all the noise that's happening, you need to focus on what you can do, right? Period. And you just need to do it and get it out there and get it over with. So getting it done, not worrying about perfection or who's going to look at it or who's going to judge it or how people are going to connect with it or if they will or if they won't or how somebody's going to read it. Just get it done right now. Because the only thing that you have control of are the things that you have direct control of. Everything else is just noise. That was something that for me really helped me. I hope people can connect with that.
I resonate with done is better than perfect. And that's true in every category, unless it's a prime rib that Lacey's making and will never eat, because then it has to be perfect in terms of the bark and the presentation. True. And, so that you can't just have a done prime rib because, come on, right?
If you have a done prime rib, you better do it over again.
Yeah. See. So you do have judgment around that area too, because you're not going to, you don't want to see anybody who's going to put a prime rib that doesn't meet the standard in front of you. I love it. Well, Lacey, it was a pleasure having you here today, my friend. Thank you so much for how you show up in the world. I appreciate who you are and who you are to me.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And for those of you that just saw Lacey jump in, she told you, though, largely she didn't have a lot of disappointment in her life that caused her to take a step back. She did realize all of the ingrained patterns of protection that existed that, by the way, were not just the trash, but the treasures in her life. Her ability to model what her dad, that was a generation older than many, and his experiences gave her the ability to see herself and understand through a lens of grace how to start to grow and change the inside of who she is, to start to connect more with people and lower that armor so that she can truly be the vulnerable person that she is inside and connect deeply through the heart that she protected for so many years. Every single one of you has the ability to do that. And when you do that, it amplifies everything in your life, particularly when you're connected to someone who amplifies you. But it does require you to flip open your lid and scan your can. What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.